Hi everyone, this is Jen Palmer with the Association for Contemplative Mind in Higher Education. The ACMHE is a multidisciplinary academic association with a membership of over 500 educators, staff, students, and researchers committed to the transformation of higher education through the development of the contemplative dimensions of teaching, learning, and knowing. The ACMHE is an initiative of the Center for Contemplative Mind and Society. Today I'd like to welcome you to our March webinar, Be Still, Move, Creative Contemplative Movement. And now I'd like to give you a little background about our presenter. Stephanie Briggs is an assistant professor of English at the Community College of Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland, where she teaches developmental English and English composition classes. In addition to English classes, for the past 15 years she's taught and assisted in the long-term development of the college's History of Hip Hop course. She is a graduate of the New School and New York University in New York City. Her program, Be Still, Move, Creative Contemplative Movement, was developed using the teachings and various practices of a number of mindfulness practitioners. In 2006, Stephanie began exploring the use of movement and mindfulness in the college classroom after studying multidisciplinary mindfulness practices, movement and vocalization with director-choreographer Meredith Monk. She also took mudra theater classes with Elaine Ewan, teacher and student of Chogyam Trungpa. She recently studied the research to performance methodology developed by teacher-poet Sekou Sundiata and his use of storytelling and creative writing to create social engagement around social justice issues developed through his America project. In addition, Stephanie studied combining arts, play, and mindfulness practice with Thich Nhat Hanh ordained Buddhist nun Sister Jewel. I'd now like to welcome Stephanie Briggs.
Good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank the Association for Contemplative Mind in Higher Education for the opportunity to present this webinar today. And so, thank you all. And I am, as you already know, Stephanie Briggs. I'm an assistant professor English at the Community College of Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland. And as I will be presenting today on my movement-based contemplative inquiry practice entitled Be Still, Move, Creative Contemplative Movement. I thought I'd begin with what it means to be still, move. I have been incorporating ideas of movement as icebreaker, storyteller, meditation, and a gateway to opening up to possibility for the past 5 years. But it wasn't until I stumbled onto the ACMHE that I found a place to begin a broader dialogue on this as an art form of mindfulness practice in the classroom. The Be Still Move practice has 3 components: setting intentions, engagement in a variety of meditation practices, most of them are informal, and creative movement, art, storytelling. In my classes, my students regularly, at least once a week, set intentions both in writing and as a part of a simple reflection. I might read a poem or a short section from a book, or simply ask them to reflect on their goals for the class at that moment. There is also a weekly form of meditation or quiet reflection, unstructured and structured, and we incorporate movement, art, and or storytelling as a means for students to develop their abilities to see or place themselves in the work they create in and out of the classroom. These 3 goals are predominantly predetermined based on the coursework, although there are times that they might be used as a tool to deal with student challenges, such as fear, that stem from unfamiliarity with topics, issues that are from outside sources, outside of the classroom, things like wanting to do whatever they're doing correctly, or as they would always say, I want to make sure I get that right, or any number of student issues. We just stop at times and just focus on the breath or play a game that simply allows us to have some fun. To give you an idea of who my students are, about half of them are first-generation college students and or have to take remedial courses in either math, English, or reading, or sometimes all 3. If I could best describe this group, I would say they are on the edge. the edge of losing a place to live, the edge of hunger, the edge of poverty, the edge of realizing for the first time they might not be prepared for college, the edge of losing their financial aid, the edge of failure because it's almost impossible to maintain a full-time academic load, care for a family member, and work maybe 2 jobs, plus struggling with some or all of the previously mentioned edges on which they stand. So we set our intentions that, at least for this moment, there is nothing else but Developmental English or English Composition 1, the 2 courses that I generally teach. During those 2 minutes of intention setting, they are asked to trust the outcome. Once we've been together for a while, I introduce the idea of guided meditation that leads to approximately 1 to 2 minutes of silence. The guided meditations might be based on the energy in the classroom that day, or maybe what happened during their last class. I never tell them that we're meditating. Instead, I tell them to take a few breaths because they are used to me asking them to take a few breaths, and then I begin. So here's how I might address the group. Let's take a few minutes to get focused. I'm going to close the door to everything you wanted to bring into the classroom. I'm going to close the door and let all of that drama stay out there for the next hour. Let go of the bus running late, the baby acting out, the car having problems starting, your ride being late, your oversleeping, traffic jams, an ill parent, child, friend, relative. Just let all that rest outside of this room. For this very moment, just be here and now. Take a breath. So let's shut down. Take out your earbuds, silence cell phones, close laptops. Sit up in your chairs. Yes, I want you to sit up. Good. Now, it's up to you. Just keep your eyes open, or if you are comfortable, you can close them. But you must keep your head up. This will only take a minute. So that's how I begin my class. So I thought we'd begin in a similar format. For those of you who are joining me today in this webinar, I ask the same of you. Just for this moment, leave pressing issues or concerns elsewhere. Just for now, for this moment, let's settle in for a brief meditation. Take some time to take your seat. Feel yourself being grounded. Feet on the floor. Feel your spine lengthening, each vertebra opening up. Feel your head balanced on your neck, resting on your shoulders. Feel your shoulders dropping down, your chest opening up, your heart wide. Your arms are at your side, your hands on your thighs. Palms down if you need grounding. Palms up if you need to gather energy. Take a moment to notice any tension you might have in your body. Just take notice, no judgment. Take a deep breath, filling up that area that is tense, and exhale to let it go. Do this a few times. Now allow your eyes to either gaze forward and downward about 6 feet in front of you. Make it a soft and forgiving gaze. Or you can close your eyes. Now take a deep breath in, letting the exhalation occur naturally. Do this for 4 breaths. Now just rest and breathe. If thoughts occur, take note without judgment, and then return to the breath. Thank you. I thought I'd share some information regarding who the students are who attend the Community College of Baltimore County. As some of you might know, community colleges have open enrollment, so our student body, particularly the ones I see who are incoming freshmen, represent a diverse population ethnically, economically, and educationally. So here's a little information on our school. We have 3 campuses, 3 extension campuses. According to our spring 2014 figures, 67,320 students were enrolled both as credit and non-credit students. 33,000 credit students, both full and part-time, and the average age of our students are between 20 and 29. 30% of our students identify as African American/Black, which is about 12,810 students. And according to a recent talk given by our Vice President of Instruction, his terms were most of this 30% are receiving financial aid. And out of that most are receiving Pell Grants. So the annual individual income for an individual is $13,500. That's the max they can make. And for a family of 4, it's $24,000 a year. So as you can see, this is one of our challenges. I think there's some flexibility with some of those numbers, but those are the basic numbers. 51% of the student body receive financial aid, and overall student body, that is, and 52% of our overall student body are working 20 or more hours per week. So as you can see, we have a diverse population that has limited income streams who come to us with the dream of getting an associate's degree and then transferring to a 4-year institution. It never dawned on them that they might not be prepared, how much textbooks would cost, how much homework is associated with taking 12 credits plus working, or the repercussions of failing courses and the impact it might have on their Pell Grants. As the pressures mounted, I realized that the traditional approaches to teaching, they were failing them. The fact was, students didn't recognize what we were teaching or how we were teaching. There needed to be a different view. I needed to find a different view. So, as you heard, my work is influenced by many, one of them being Mudra Theater work, which was created by Trungpa. His ideas were, quote, "In order to prove existence, you have to do something to project out. Finally, you begin to feel some sort of play back and forth as the projector and the projectionist relate together. So, in the practice, you can go slowly through the threefold process of perception: the sense of being, the sense of doing, the sense of linking together." So in 2006, I took the first of many classes with performance artist Meredith Monk and began incorporating her program of conscious movement, storytelling, and vocalization in the classroom. In 2013, I attended a symposium at the New School in New York City focusing on the methodology of collaboration, compassion, and citizenship created by the late poet Sekou Sundiata, and many of his ideas have been incorporated into my classes as well. Be Still Move is an homage to these innovators. So as meditators, we understand the idea of stillness. To be still and sit in the present moment is part of the path. But what does that mean to a community college student? To be is to set intentions and bear witness to one's own essence, plus allow for the essence of each student's unique qualities. This is important to my students because some are so disembodied for a number of reasons, including those who suffer from traumatic circumstances in their lives. So it was important for the uniqueness of each individual to be manifested and for students to embody the knowledge that they already know and are beginning to digest. This can only occur when students are guided towards stillness. Louise Steinemann's book, The Knowing Body, The Artist, the Storyteller, and the Contemporary Performance, investigates the idea of being still and body-mind awareness. She states, "The technique of natural movement is the knowing application of insights about one's own body-mind. We learn to be more aware of what is happening to us physiologically and psychologically," end quote. Finally, to move, students are asked to be present in the movement itself, moving towards stillness and awareness. So, here's a question that I asked myself as I embarked on this movement inquiry journey. How do I incorporate my understanding of the body through movement and use that information to open up dialogues regarding race, ego, fear, and socioeconomic differences, and how can movement-based exercise compassionately open students and faculty up to wonder and surprise rather than recognition? Well, this is a pretty big undertaking. I must say my question was much bigger than I thought I could handle initially, but I began introducing these concepts into the classroom as well as presenting them to my colleagues, which was not always met with enthusiasm and sometimes a fair amount of skepticism. Yet the fact was that differently situated students wanted to and needed to be heard, and over time, this approach has proven successful for many. As an instructor, I had to be willing to allow for surprising insights and know that students, when allowed to wonder, could turn ideas that we as faculty once thought we recognized, and they turn them upside down and on their sides. I had to be still, listen to what was being presented, see what made it valid, and find ways not to throw away that which needed more time and thought, and based on what I knew and was willing to receive, expand on that idea without judgment. By incorporating the ideas of contemplative inquiry into the classroom, I wanted to guide students towards reaching deep understanding and insights in order to tackle problems using curiosity and openness to new ideas, leading to more inquiry and open awareness. I wanted to be able to do this with movement and art. I want to say that this is not an easy order to fill. Community college students, like many students, live in fear of failure and expectations that don't necessarily reflect what is being taught. So when you add movement and or art to the mix, there will be pushback, even when the final outcomes have a positive impact on their final grade. Even after all of that, I still would get pushback. On that note, one of the things I've asked you to bring to this webinar are colored pencils, crayons, or markers, and 5x7 cardstock paper. In a moment, we will engage in an art reflection project as I talk, take the time to set up your items. I do a similar exercise to the one we're about to undertake in my classes. Many times I ask students to respond to a question that relates to a topic that is open-ended enough to allow them to expand their ideas. They are then asked to write a short essay of 400 to 500 words on this question, plus create a visual image that is a reflection of their written observation. Students bring their written and visual piece to class. I collect all the visual pieces and place them throughout the classroom. The students are then asked to spend the next 10 minutes or so silently engaging with each work. They are permitted to point out observations to others, but no words are allowed. Once each person is done, they are asked to sit in silence until the others are finished and seated. I then open up time for discussions on observations. What happens is many of the creators of the work will respond to their fellow students' observations, offering additional insights or expanding on what they've heard. Or sometimes they marvel at observations that they themselves had not seen in their own work. This is an exciting approach to self-exploration, self-recognition, and self-awareness. So, get all your supplies out and let us begin. So here is the quote. Show up. Pay attention to that, show up. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be open to, not attached to, the outcome. So for the next 3 to 4 minutes, I want you to respond using your color palette. And I want you to respond not so much with words or images, but with concepts, ideas, squiggles, whatever it is you want to do. And as you respond to this poem, I will read it a few more times. And just draw freely and be inspired. Show up. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be open to, not attached to, the outcome. Show up. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be open to, not attached to, the outcome. show up. Pay attention to what has heart and meaning. Speak your truth without blame or judgment. Be open to, not attached to, the outcome. Thank you. I hope you can finish these or play with these a little more. Here are some images that my students created based on the question, are we responsible for what we bring forth into the world? So why movement? Modern dancer Martha Graham once said, quote, all that matters is this one moment in movement. Make it vital and worth living. Don't let it slip away unnoticed, unused. The practice of movement requires patience. Studies by the Center for Inspired Teaching in Washington, D.C. have noted how, quote, incorporating movement-based activities can help students of all ages articulate and internalize new ideas and invite adult participants to leave their comfort zone and re-examine their roles as both teachers and learners. Incorporating movement into the classroom involves a certain amount of risk. You must be willing to be vulnerable, in charge, silly, observant. For me, it was also based on a need to allow my students space to grow, and that can only happen if I create an open and safe space. This requires creating community. One of the main challenges in a community college, on a community college campus, is creating that community, particularly because students tend to what I call learn and run. You know, learn and run to work, learn and run home to get to the kids, learn and run. Many don't have time to join a campus club or activity and miss out on the college campus experience with fellow students. Using movement bridges that gap, creating awareness and openness between student and teacher. Therefore, it is important to create a community in the class where walls are broken down, practice and patience embraced. In the paper, Contemplative Inquiry on Movement, Managing Writer's Block in Academic Writing, the authors determined that their development of, quote, contemplation of movement is a rite of passage with the following processes occurring: acceptance, identification of emotions, inner space, body-mind experiences, body memories, bodily metaphors and symbols, and that the nonverbal ways of learning can be applied to research writing, end quote. Working this way engages the body and memory to be challenged, so I try to limit the scope of my exercises as I am not trained to deal with the emotional challenges that might come up with my students. Of course, things do come up for students, something that time constraints in this webinar won't allow me to discuss. But overall, the goal is to build trust and empathy. In addition, many of these exercises can sometimes serve as an invitation to share personal information on a student's socioeconomic or cultural experience. It's imperative to move slowly through the process and its evolution and remain aware of emotion and physical events that might occur. There are a number of ways I address these challenges, plus I always have a list of college counselors should a student exhibit signs of distress. Once again, there's not enough time to discuss how I handle these during this webinar, but feel free to contact me and I can talk more about this. Overall, the final outcome of creating any movement-based exercise is to be present as presenter, observer, and instructor in the lessons of potential and gratitude. So, the exercise you're about to experience opens up pathways for many students to pay respects to an individual who is a close family member or friend. Many times these individuals have had major influences on them. Although all students are invited to participate, those who don't wish to can opt out. But all students must serve as observers. I have conducted this exercise for the past 4 years, and I've only had 2 students opt out, and I think that's because we built strong community prior to the activity. Also, this activity with a class of 20 can take close to the full class period, so keep that in mind. This exercise should work well in a number of courses such as women's studies, psychology, sociology, English, anthropology, or creative writing, to name a few. So first I want to set up the exercises as I would in the classroom. At the beginning of class, I lead my students through a number of exercises that include movement, and if the room is large enough, or I conduct the class in a room like the theater or dance studio if it's available. And we do things like breath work and some verbal and nonverbal exercises. Once they are warmed up, this takes about 10 minutes, we begin. Please note this is an exercise that I generally do halfway through the semester after some amount of community has been created. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to set this up as if you are my students, and I'm going to read some of the questions that I asked them to consider for this particular exercise. So here we are in front of the classroom. You know, we're looking at me in front of the blackboard. And I want you to just get comfortable, take a few breaths, and reflect on the following. I want you to think of a person who is older than you are, who you respect and love, and who respects and loves you back. I would prefer this person be a relative, a great-grandparent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, parent. But you could choose a closer, older friend, minister, rabbi, teacher. But they should be someone with whom you have a close relationship and have spent a good amount of time outside of their position. So, what is their name? What do they call themselves? Think about what this person looks like. Are they tall, short, thin, stocky, muscular, heavy-set? Do they stand erect, slightly hunched? What color is their hair? Is it dyed? Do they wear a wig or have extensions? Is their hair long, short, straight, curly, unkempt, styled? Do they play with their hair? Does your person smile or frown? Are they usually happy or grumpy? Think of an outfit you've seen them in that remind you of them and who they are. What does that outfit look like? Are they in jeans, a dress, a suit, tie, nightgown, bathrobe? Are they wearing sneakers, heels, orthopedic shoes, slippers? What color is this outfit? Is it crisp and fresh, sprinkled? Is it stained? Are the shoes shined? Are the heels run over? When they walk, do they walk fast, slow, with a limp, shuffle their feet? Do they use a cane or a walker? Are they in a wheelchair? Do they need assistance when they walk, such as holding on to a piece of furniture or balancing using the wall? What does it sound like when you hear them walking? Do they smoke? What do they look like? Do they have a drink in their hand? What do they sound like? Hear them speaking. Is their voice scratchy, soft, loud, with a cough, a lisp, a stutter? Do they giggle, laugh loudly, snicker? Finally, how do they smell? See them moving around in the outfit you've chosen. What is the environment that they're in? Are they inside a house? Where are they in this outfit? What are they doing? I'd like you to spend the next moment with thoughts of your person. I think we could do the video.
All right, thanks Stephanie for leading us through that practice. We're going to show a video now, and it's going to take just a minute to get that going, and you will see the PowerPoint presentation go away momentarily, but just bear with us as we get that going. And if you don't see the video in about a minute, I'm actually sending out a link to all of you in the little chat pane of your webinar panel. So if the video doesn't get started in about a minute, just follow that link.
All right, I'd like 4 to 6 students to come forward. All right, now I want you to take a position that you're comfortable in. We do have a chair there and a table, so you have some options on what you might want to use. Get into a position that you're comfortable in. Now, I want you to see something that your person would see. Look at it through their eyes. Feel your face slowly beginning to look like your person's face. Slowly allow your body to take on one position that your person does on a regular basis and hold that position. Have your person introduce themselves by the name they call themselves on a regular basis. Begin by saying, "My name is." You will all do this at the same time on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
My name is Briggs.
Think about what your person is wearing and what they are doing in this outfit. Make a simple move they make in the outfit. Begin doing what they would be doing. If they are moving, you can move, but the movement must be within the space created around you. Continue this move until I ring the bell. Hold the position. Have your person see you doing something you should not be doing, and have them call you by a name that they like to call you. Do this all at the same time on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
That's it.
Hold your position. Now begin telling a story that your person has told you either a number of times or one that sticks out for you. You will tell the story over and over again until I ring the bell. When I ring the bell, make sure that you maintain the position of the person. You will all speak at the same time on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
I can't tell you how much we love to drive it. You get out of the in-laws, everything. It's just your mom and my sister. We're just so happy to be here. And I can't tell you how much I think about it.
Continue holding the position of your person. What we're going to do now is slowly make our way back to our original selves, as if we were rolling a film in reverse. I will guide you. See your person, see you doing something you should not be doing, and have them call you by your name on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Have your person do an activity in the clothing that they wear. Continue doing this move until I ask you to stop by ringing the bell. And remember to maintain your person's posture when I ask you to stop. 1, 2, 3. Have your person introduce themselves by saying, "My name is," on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
My name is Dorothy.
Continue holding your position. Now see something they would see. Now feel their face slowly disappearing and feel your face appearing, but continue holding your person's posture. Very slowly, begin to change from your person's posture into your own posture. When you are finally back to yourself, just hold it until I sound the bell. Thank you. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that video with us.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would love for you to send me your responses on what you saw for this event. Generally what we do in the classroom after the students have completed this sort of exercise, I will have 5 students come up at any given time, and then I would ask the other students after they have done this run-through of changing from themselves into their individual back to themselves, I would ask my students to sit for 1 minute of reflection, and then I would ask them to write for about 1 or 2 minutes in their journal. And after they've completed that, then we open up for discussion based on the question, what did you see? And it's always interesting to see what students see, and to be aware that sometimes when I thought I had not seen anything, how many of my students saw something. So it's an interesting exercise. So I'd love to hear about what you saw during this sort of transformative exercise. So I'm going to end here, and thank you for joining me today. And I'd love for you to share the images that you drew during the session with the poem. And if you could send that to me, that would be terrific. I think Jen will give you my email address, which is bestillmove@mail.com. And I was hoping that, and what I'd like to do actually is have these images as a part of a collage on my website, which is still being worked on. I thought I'd have it in time for you today, but it will probably take another few weeks before it's up and running. So I wanted to end with this quote from John Dewey from his book Art as Experience. What is true of the producer is true of the perceiver. He may perceive academically, looking for entities with which he already is familiar, but if he perceives aesthetically, he will create an experience of which the intrinsic subject matter, the substance, is new. So thank you for your time and willingness to find out a little more about movement and contemplative inquiry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your work with us today, and also for sharing some of the practices that you lead in your classroom. We do have a few minutes left for questions, so if you do have some questions for Stephanie, you can type them into the question box that should be in your GoToWebinar panel that's docked on the right side of your screen. So we're just going to have, I don't know, about a minute of silence on this end as people type in their questions. And then I'll select a few questions for Stephanie and read them aloud. But again, if you have further questions after the webinar, we will be giving out Stephanie's email address. So Stephanie, we're getting some great questions in, and so I'm just going to start reading a few for you. We have a question from Jeff. How do you specifically lay the foundation that allows this risk to be taken? Are activities sequenced?
That's a good question. Many times, so much is dependent on the class. Right now I'm trying to sequence things, and I'm finding that that is sometimes more challenging than I'd like it to be. I end up not doing certain things because the students need something other than my game plan. But I generally start with just getting them to breathe. I think many times in the middle of a class, early on, they're just so panicked that my pausing and just telling everyone to take a deep breath is the beginning. I then, depending on the need, will start, well, I actually will begin with intention as well. So we'll be writing, there'll always be an intention setting at least once a week where they take the time at the beginning of the class to set an intention. And then at the end of the session, we might share whether we were able to accomplish what we had intended to do. And finally, I guess what happens is meditation, or the idea of meditation, occurs as needed many times. Sometimes the stress level is high, and I realize perhaps I am the person who created that stress level. So I will work at a pause. I will incorporate a pause in it, or sometimes I don't even realize I need a pause until the class is over, so I'll come back and introduce an exercise that might allow the students to relax, reflect, and to recognize that it is not my intention to cause harm, even though sometimes I think they think that might be the case. So I hope that answers the question.
Great. Yeah, thank you for addressing that. I think that's very helpful. And we have another question from Lee Ray, and she asks, can you talk a little bit about how you connect these exercises and observations to content and topics you are working on in your class?
Yes. I generally will have at least one or two assignments that require real interconnectedness, and I say that because I know we always talk about we need to do group exercises, and we need to work in teams, and we need to do all this sort of group work. But what I try to do is create community. So let's say we are right now we're working on a project where we're looking at the copyright law, and they have to be in teams, and they will actually be giving oral presentations. So I actually do the exercise that I just showed you, that you just experienced, to help them have a deeper connection earlier on. The other thing I do to help with, to assist in content a lot of times, especially when I have the open-ended questions, or I will create an open-ended question that will address a topic that we are going to be covering, or an idea that we're going to be covering in class. And so to have them create a visual image of that topic allows them to engage in that work a little differently. Sometimes visually the students will have more to say about an issue that when they're looking at a visual image than they will if they are reading it. So it opens up more conversation on a topic. So some of it is a little about creativity, to find, based on what the content is, how we might be able to find creative means to allow them to open up and look at that work differently. So that might help.
Wonderful, thanks. I think we have time for just one more question, and I've got one here from Sarah. How do your students react to these activities?
Well, it's funny, Sarah. I just got one of my reviews back from my students from last semester, and I would say about 1/3 of them think I'm crazy. And I say that in a sort of good way, I guess. They found, we actually looked at movement as metaphor, and we were looking at how movement, the term movement, and what that word meant And then we discovered that movement was a form of social justice, and the term, so that sort of turned the word on its side. And so we were fortunate enough to have a show in our art gallery that was looking at social justice issues in a very abstract way using art. So I took my students to the gallery, and that really set some of them on their ear because they had never considered art as something that has anything to do with English Composition 1. So there was pushback because they really did not, they were not in an art class. They kept telling me they weren't in an art class. We were only in the gallery maybe once, or I think twice, to investigate our themes. So, but it was interesting because they wrote some of their best papers. So so my review was that, it was sort of unorthodox and a little unusual, but for most of my students, they wrote some of their most brilliant work at that time. So, yeah, I would say that it is embraced by, I would say, 2/3 of my students who actually get it, and then I would say, based on my reviews, they just found it really odd and unorthodox, although their final outcome was quite strong. So that helps.
That's great to hear, Stephanie. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today, and thank you again so much, Stephanie, for providing us with this opportunity to experience some of the work you've been doing in your classroom.
Thank you.
It's just been wonderful.
Thank you.
Just to remind everyone, this webinar has been recorded and it will be available on the website soon if you'd like to share it with friends or colleagues. If you'd like to view past webinars or learn more about the Association for Contemplative Mind in Higher Education and the Center for Contemplative Mind and Society, please visit our website at contemplativemind.org. Thank you for listening.